engagement. I don't know how many of you read newspapers, but how many of you read the comments underneath? Yeah? So quite a lot of people. Not all, but quite a lot. And how many of you actually comment? How many of you put a comment in? Very few. That's the rule. Normally it's about 1% of the audience might put a comment in. But the comment area is incredibly important, but it's very different to the story itself, so keep them apart. And lastly, there is no owner and there is no editorial interference. So the editor, no one tells the editor what to write, and if I'm honest, he barely tells the journalist what to write. And you know in the morning meeting in films, when the editor's sitting in a big chair and he goes, you write this story, you write that story, and you write this. It doesn't work like that. It's calm, no one says much, but everyone does their job and it happens. It's weird how it works, but that's how it works. And you give the people, you empower the people to make the decisions themselves. And lastly, it's a very considered, calm tone of voice. So here are some of the posters that we used to describe, because I'm talking you through the process of how we got to. This says here, owned by no one, free to challenge anything. The Guardian. So that, if you can think, is about no owner. The next one, facts and opinion, best kept apart, because you end up with a terrible mess if you confuse them. So it's a very clear line from a brand positioning to the advertising that we do. Here, explore other views before arriving at your own. So go and have a look around, see what other people are thinking, what they're saying, before coming to your own. Now here, I'm going to show you a television ad. You'll understand what's going on. You won't be able to hear it, unfortunately, but I'm going to tell you what it says. I'm going to show it once, I'll show it twice, then I'll tell you what it actually says. But I can't get the volume to work. I apologize, but that's life.
Seen from another point of view, it gives quite a different impression. Whole picture, you can fully understand what's going on.
So I'm going to play it for you one more time, and what it says is this.
An event seen from one point of view.
An event seen from one point of view gives you one picture. Seen from another point of view gives you quite another picture.
But it's only when you get the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on.
But it's only when you see the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on. Now this advertisement was made in 1982, and that's the old logo. It is the most famous advertisement in newspapers anywhere in the world. And in 1982, this was a revolutionary advertisement. Now it looks like, okay, I've seen it, I understand. But if you can imagine 30 years ago, this was incredible and made a stake in the ground for what the Guardian means. And people who remember this still talk about it. This is always, in every case study, in every marketing case study, one of the best expositions of how to develop your brand positioning into advertising, and is still used now in many case studies. So that's, and the annoying thing for every marketing director afterwards, including me, is you have to do better than that, which is really difficult. So you'll notice that here, there's a certain look and a certain feel, okay? It's bright, it's colorful, and it's a certain look and feel. Now, we do lots of product marketing. This was a supplement. This was 1,000 novels every person must read. And we put this in the newspaper every day, and we sold a lot more newspapers because of this. It was a 24-page supplement over 7 days. And it says here, 7 genres over 7 days, chosen by Guardian literary experts, series starting this Saturday with love. And people bought the newspaper a lot. And the reason why we chose literature is that the Guardian audience is absolutely obsessed with culture. The thing that the Guardian audience is really about is about culture. If you are into culture, you will read The Guardian. So choosing books rather than football seemed a sensible thing to do. So it's about understanding your audience and knowing what your audience want, which is why we did that. Personally, I would have done it on football. Here's an interesting one. Again, if you work for any brand, you need to view your readers, your consumers as a community, as a constituency of people. In this case, this is a Guardian dating service. Now, in the early days of The Guardian, in the newspaper, there used to be quite a grubby page, which would say, men seeking women, men seeking men, women seeking women. Whatever you want, it's fine. And you pay for an advertisement, and you put the advertisement in, and then people ring you up, and then you can date, and you whatever, get married, do whatever you like. And after a bit, now I remember in the old days, this was the only way that you could do sort of dating services. Clearly, in the new era, how many of you have been online dating? Oh, can't be none of you. Okay, I know that some of you have been online dating. You don't have to put your hand up, just put a little finger up. So you must have been. If not, Bratislava is like nowhere else in the world. I don't believe you. Anyway, the point is that culturally, online dating is completely acceptable now. And, you know, people of a certain generation, it's fine, it's totally cool. In the old days, that didn't be the case. And the online dating in the newspaper was a declining model. It was a lot of money, but it was diminishing because people thought it was a little grubby, not happy with it. In the online space, it's a big business. And The Guardian decided that actually they would allow Guardian readers to date each other. So there would be a dating service. If you want to meet other Guardian readers, because they're all liberal, probably centre-left, really lovely people, and you might, and you might want to date them. And so it's become a very big, and it's about viewing the audience in a different way. It's understanding your target audience. And in this case, this is now spends a lot of money for the Guardian newspaper. And this is an advert that just says Bogart, Bacall, a couple of plot twists, some midget gems, those are little sweets available in England, a debate about the ending, so it's a nice date out. And here it says Guardian soulmates, all you need for a good date. There's about 100,000 people paying €8 a month on The Guardian doing this. And the funny thing is it's not just Guardian readers now. It's people who are not Guardian readers who want to date Guardian readers. So it's quite interesting. And it's a business model that works very well, and again, it's about understanding your target audience. The secret of any marketing, of any business, is understanding your target audience. And this is a really good example. Guardian now does other services. So it does things like, there's a thing called house swapping. It's not wife swapping, it's house swapping. And what it is that if you go on holiday, I'm married, I have 2 children, I want to go on holiday in America. There are websites now, which The Guardian's one of them, where you can swap houses. So another family in America comes and lives in my house, I go and live in their house, no money changes hands, everyone gets a cheap holiday. It's fantastic. I did it in Seville 3 weeks ago, I've done it in America twice, and at the beginning you think, oh God, they're going to ruin my house. They're not going to ruin your house because you're in their house. And it's a great way of understanding the audience and making money. It has nothing to do with journalism. It has to do with the sorts of people who read the paper, and you're going to basically trust them. And this is the secret of all decent marketing. Understand your audience incredibly well and develop products that relate to that audience. So, big business for newspapers is finding a job. In the old days, Monday, if you bought the newspaper, was media. If you wanted a job in media, you had to buy The Guardian. That was the newspaper. Tuesday was education, and Wednesday was public sector jobs, any public sector jobs. And it made a fortune for The Guardian, lots of money. Now, that money has gone online, and The Guardian has websites that service those particular categories of industry very well for people to get jobs. Also, it's a lot of money. Nothing to do with journalism, all to do with the audience that read the paper. Brings in a lot of money. This is an interesting one. This is every Saturday we would come up with, some of them were marketing ideas, some of them were journalistic ideas. This was a little booklet that we gave away with the paper that was said, The Guide to Understanding People. And it says, what makes us us? Leader, fearless, introvert, selfish, dreamer, obsessive, lazy, impulsive, angry, idealist, impatient, and rebel. And this was an advertisement for people to come and buy the paper on Saturday. It was a booklet we put in the paper and people bought the paper. So it's multiple different ways to sell the paper by developing products, whether they're a product for one day or a product for a week, that help sell the paper. And here it just says, you know, free 2-part guide to understanding the people in The Guardian this weekend. This was one, back to culture. This was 1,000 songs you should hear. So once you've done 1,000 books, then you do 1,000 music, then you do 1,000 films. It's all about culture, and this was for 7 days, 1,000 songs everyone must hear. Now the important thing is, I mean, I love music, but I'm not a journalist. We got the journalists to write this. We asked 10 journalists to choose their 100 favorite songs and made 1,000 songs. And it was a supplement that appeared for 7 days. Thousands of people came to the paper to buy it. Again, we wouldn't have done it on football, but we did do it on this, because this is what the Guardian audience really wants to know about. Have any of you heard of Glastonbury Music Festival? Yeah? Have any of you been to Glastonbury Music Festival? Yeah, fantastic. Glastonbury Music Festival is the world's greatest music festival. It's 180,000 people stuck in a field for about 4 or 5 days. It rains, you've probably seen it on television. All the biggest bands played this summer: Pulp, Radiohead. Who else played? Who played? U2, they're rubbish. Yeah. I didn't go and see U2. I hate U2. I went to go and see Radiohead played a secret gig in another field, so I ran off to go and see that. But the point is, I know what happens at Glastonbury. Glastonbury is a place where people get really drunk, some people take drugs, I don't care. That's not for me to judge. The point is, 180,000 people are behind a 12-foot wall for 5 days having a fantastic time. I want The Guardian to be the newspaper that those people are reading. And when we were there, we did a sponsorship deal with Glastonbury. And Glastonbury is a very sort of politically centre-left festival as well. It's very right on. And we went to go and see Michael Leavis and said, we want to sponsor the festival, blah, 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 but we want to be the only newspaper available. And he was like, fantastic idea. So if you ever go to Glastonbury Festival, the only newspaper you can buy is The Guardian. And very funny, of course, in the evening, and I was the marketing director at the time, and by the time people have read they're sitting down in the sun, or if it's raining, they're using it to keep the rain away. But the thing that used to make me laugh most of all was every night in front of, there'd be U2, whoever said U2, other bands, people would make bonfires out of the newspaper. I don't care, because it's in a festival. And you've got to be cool about it. You've got to let it go. And so we sponsored Glastonbury. Now, the other thing that we did is that, and have you noticed, everything looks the same. It all has the same look and feel, and that's incredibly important. So the other thing we did, this little bag says the Guardian Glastonbury bag, bigger than the bags under your eyes, but only just. Get yours free with every purchase of the Guardian on site. Did you get one of these?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. What's funny about this is that we printed about 50,000 of these bags. They're really cool. And in London, or elsewhere, you still see people with these bags because they took them off and it's free advertising for us. So young people, they're wearing the bag, they're cycling around London, cycling around Manchester, wherever they live, and these bags are really good. And it takes your brand out, it associates your brand with cool people, and it's a brilliant form of marketing and costs nothing. And the audience know what The Guardian's doing, and we know what they're doing, so it's a perfect relationship. This is another project that we did. This is the biggest literary festival in the world. It takes place in a field in Wales. And it started off very small, and about 9 years ago, The Guardian became the sponsor. It became the Guardian Hay Literary Festival. In fact, if you see there, you see Philippe Sands in the middle. Yeah, that's my brother. So I made sure he was in an ad. I made that ad, and I put him in the ad. But this is a festival which is all about books, all about literature. I'm saying the same thing again and again. You've got Glastonbury here, and you've got literature here. And I know that the people who go to Glastonbury in 20 years' time are going to end up at the Hay Festival, because that's the development of a person's cultural route. That's what they're going to do. This was a massive sponsorship for The Guardian. Same thing. We developed a different bag for the Guardian Hay Festival, but the same principle. The sort of bag that my mother would be happy to wear rather than the Glastonbury one. So this is all the stuff as a case study that The Guardian does. And why does it matter? And why is it relevant? Well, it all matters, I think, because it's commercially incredibly important. And lots of, again, you could put every brand will have a case study, but this is an interesting one because I think it delivers a competitive position in a very crowded marketplace. There's so many newspapers and websites in the UK, so you have to carve out your position, who you are, what you stand for. If you don't go to Glastonbury, or you think Glastonbury is awful, it's unlikely you're going to be a Guardian reader. You might not go, but if you think it's disgusting because all these kids are in there getting pissed, taking drugs, you're unlikely to be a Guardian reader. That's fine, so go and read something else. So carve out the position that you want to be in. It delivers a very compelling reason for readers to buy the paper, both from the brand positioning that I showed you, from those posters early on, right through to the products that we develop on a daily and weekly basis. But equally, it develops a really compelling story for advertisers, because advertisers bring in tons of money. So they also need to understand both your audience and the positioning that you're actually doing. And here's some hard facts about The Guardian. The Guardian actually only has about 14% share of the total daily press circulation. But about 1.2 million people read it on a daily basis. Now compare that to the website. Now I haven't really talked about the website much, but I will. The website has changed everything. And I wanted to show it to you, but I can't, but you'll be able to see it on your own. The website is also changing journalism. I don't know if you remember, there was a story of, there were some riots last summer, 2 summers ago in London, not the recent ones, but we have quite a lot of them. But the ones about 2 years ago where a policeman pushed a guy and he died. Does anyone remember that? Yeah? It was called the Tomlinson affair. And this was a newspaper seller, quite a poor guy, who no one quite knew how he died. Now, what was really interesting is that an American, and the police lied about it. They said we didn't touch him. It wasn't us. There was an American citizen who lived in London who caught it on his mobile phone. He was taking a picture. It was anti-capitalist protests, you know, this sort of thing. And an American tourist took a picture on his video phone of the guy being pushed. Now, he decided that he would give that piece of footage to the Guardian newspaper. Because the Guardian newspaper, because of all its editorial values, because of all its brand positioning, would treat that story with the respect that it deserved. The story there, and it was a totally web-created story. And it was a citizen journalism story. And it was an amazing relationship where citizen journalism and a big brand come together to create a big story. And if you go back to the chart I showed you earlier, sorry about this. This one, it was a brilliant example of where the third route goes right. Because one of the target audience realized that there was a brand of newspaper and website that will deal with this story correctly. The Guardian broke the story, and 6 months later, the policeman is now on trial. Now that story may never have surfaced. And it surfaced because an American tourist took it and thought, where shall I put this story? I'm going to give it to the Guardian. He could have given it somewhere else. Another example is the WikiLeaks story that I mentioned earlier. Why did Julian Assange give that story to the Guardian, Der Spiegel, and the New York Times to launch it on the same day? He gave it because in his head, somehow, is all this understanding of what the Guardian is. And whether it's the Guardian or a bottle of water, it's about owning a piece of space in people's heads. So, going back to my newspaper case study, I don't know if you can see that there, but when it comes to a newspaper, we understand exactly who our readers are. And the Guardian knows exactly. If you look at the top there, it'll say all adults at the top. And if you look 4 down, it'll say social grade A, AB, ABC1. Yeah? You're familiar with that as a concept. In England, 4% of people are A class. 11% of Guardian readers are A class. AB, 27% of people, that's how I can use this actually. Oh. Good. Okay, right. 4% of the UK population, 11% of Guardian readers. AB, 27% of the population, 63% of the Guardian. Okay? So this is telling you that it's a pretty upmarket audience. If you look here at education, this is about having a degree. 21% of the UK population has been educated to the age of 21 or plus. But here, 59% of Guardian readers. So if you're an advertiser, you know what this audience is. And it's unbelievably important to understand this. Because as an advertiser, you will go to some newspapers or some brands and not others. And this data is incredibly important, and The Guardian spends a lot of time and money developing this data and making a compelling case for advertisers to work with The Guardian. And even if the advertiser has a personal dislike for The Guardian, which lots do, you cannot ignore this. And this is why people will advertise it, because the data is absolutely clear and they know exactly what sort of person reads The Guardian. My guess is if you all lived in London, the majority of you would read The Guardian. Not all of you, but a lot. It's read a lot by a younger audience and by a student audience. If this was a sociology class, all of you would read The Guardian. But as a management and economic, the majority of you would, but you might not in 10 years' time. But I think the majority of you would now. So, and this is how we describe Guardian readers. We describe them as they're affluent, they have money, they're young, they're urban, with a keen sense of adventure when it comes to trying new products. They have varied interests and they have a lot of money. But they're very hard to reach through other media because this audience don't watch much television, but they do read The Guardian, whether it's online or whether it's the paper product. So they're very well traveled, they're financially savvy, they love food and drink, they spend money on food and drink. How many of you would say this is you? Put your hand up. It's me. Oh, come, must be more than 2 of you. They're sports fans and they're gym rats, because the funny thing is, I talked about football beforehand, they're not interested in many sports. The only sport they're interested in is football, and even that, not that much. We had a decision. I showed you the newspaper when we redesigned it. There are 4 sections to that newspaper, and we redesigned the newspaper. The first section was general news, the second section was a lifestyle section, the third section was jobs, and we wondered what to do with the 4th section. Shall we make it sport or shall we make it business? Sport or business, sport or business? And we decided in the end to make it sport, but it was a touch and go decision. It's also very important editorially, because all the marketing we do reflects the value of the newspaper since it was created in 1821. But here's the thing, okay? This is the editor of The Guardian, and he said, in 20 years' time, The Guardian may not exist on print. And we're at a period in the newspaper's life which is incredibly scary, because here we are with a newspaper which brings in a lot of money. And here's the digital thing, here. And you don't know when to let go of this and go with this, because all the money's there. And it's really scary, and no one quite knows what to do. And some of you will have noticed that within the world of, it's not all free now. I gather here there's an experiment, the piano experiment, where Slovakian newspapers are going behind a paywall. And some people are being asked to pay, not for news, but for comment and some of the features. It's a really interesting experiment. And what is happening, as I said to you at the beginning, the business model of newspapers is basically broken. And everyone is trying to work out what to do. The Guardian is saying here, we will never have a paywall, because we want to ensure liberal journalism exists in perpetuity and is read by as many people as possible, which is why 44 million people a month read it online. And they believe that the advertising model will work. The Times newspaper in London, which is a big newspaper, has said, do you know what? We're going to have a paywall. If you want to read us online, you have to pay. No one's reading it. The Daily Telegraph over here is saying, no, we're not sure, but I think later this year or next year, we're going to do what the New York Times has done, which is you can read the first 20 articles, and after that you have to pay. So there's a mass experiment going on, not in journalism, but in how to finance it. And when people say, oh, there's a real crisis in journalism, there isn't. There's a crisis in how to pay for it. which is different to the crisis in journalism. It is a big crisis, and I think it will work out. And experiments in Slovakia, like the piano experiment, are really interesting. Rupert Murdoch launched in New York a product called The Beast. The Beast is a tablet-only newspaper. It's been available for 4 months. It has 80,000 subscribers. Now, that 80,000 might seem like a lot in Slovakia. It's nothing in America. That is 1/16 of what it needs to break even. 1/16. So it needs to have about 1.2 million people paying for it to break even. So you see the extent of the problem. Now, my own view is that 3 years ago it was a terrible situation. It is changing now, because people are now realizing that people will pay for some things, but they won't pay for other things. If you get The Guardian on your mobile phone, you can get it for free, and it exists, but you can get a mobile app, which costs you about 3 or 4, maybe €5 a year. So people are now saying, actually, we're going to make people pay for some things and not for others. And I think there's going to be a model, and everyone is experimenting all the time. I have no idea if the piano experiment will work. It might work, and the early indications are in Slovakia, you seem to be willing to pay for that. And apparently about 40,000 people have signed up for it, which I think is a lot and is really impressive. But there is a rule in marketing, that in any world, that someone has to pay for this stuff. In the old days, it was the advertiser who paid for it. But now, it is maybe going to be partly the advertiser, partly the subscriber, and partly direct to the consumer. And for those of you who are thinking of taking a career in media, it is about the most interesting time imaginable to be in it. And it's interesting, 5 years ago I would argue it's too difficult because no one has a clue. But now everyone is trying to work out how to do it. People pay for football on television. People pay for films on television. Why shouldn't they pay for the news? Now, culturally, it's going to take half a generation to work it. I won't pay for it. I come from a culture where it's all free, don't want it. My children will pay for it. I'm sure they will. And some of you will pay for it. And if you don't, and this is not a threat, it's just going to happen, there's going to be a potential crisis in news and the delivery of news. So the future for the press looks like this. I think that circulation will continue to decline. I know nowhere in the world, apart from China and India, where newspaper sales are going up. I went to a conference in India, and I spoke at a conference, and I was all gloom and doom, and the world's terrible, and no one's making any money. The Indians are making more money in news than is possible, because the country is huge, the education of the country is developing, newspapers are very cheap, and advertisers pay big rates. In China, I worked in Guangzhou for a Chinese newspaper last year, and they were asking me about how can we not make the mistakes that you made in the development from a newspaper to a web paper. I said, I don't have the answer, but I'll talk to you about it. They sell 1.8 million a day. And the boss said we could sell 2.2 million if we wanted to, but we're deciding not to keep it down because it's too complicated to print so many. So around the world, yeah, great. So around the world, it's very different. But the trend around the world is that circulation is continuing to decline. And diversification of your product is essential. If you think of your product less as a newspaper and more of a group of people, the question then becomes what unifies those people and what things can you sell them? Because you can sell them lots of things. If you think about it, The Guardian sells dating, it sells holidays, it sells house swapping, it will sell you diet products, it will sell you all sorts of things done in a Guardian way. And this is how media brands are now beginning to diversify their revenue. And the big question is the issue of paid-for content online. Will that work? I think it will work, but I think it will take another 10 years. And I think many newspapers and media organizations will die in that 10 years. And the ones with the deepest pockets or the cleverest people will be the ones that survive. And the key on this is to maintain your money coming from the newspaper. It's better to cannibalize your own revenue than let someone else have your lunch. So it's better to take your people with you to an online version of the paper, even if it's worth less, because you want to keep them in the tent. Because in time, we will work out how to do it. Just don't lose them. And print revenues will remain larger than online revenues for quite some time. It's really easy in a newspaper to